crazy. I took you in when you were homeless.
He didn't know she was the new CEO of London.
Every story is more than just words. It's a feeling, a truth, a hidden emotion. If you love powerful, emotional, and unforgettable stories that stay with you, then you're in the right place. Welcome to ZZ Stories.
The homeless woman and child huddled against the brick wall were invisible to everyone else rushing past, but Ezra Blackwood saw them, and stopping to help would either destroy what little he had left, or become the miracle that saved his dying daughter's life. The bitter wind of early February swept through Burlington, Vermont, carrying with it the kind of cold that seemed to seep into your very bones. Ezra pulled his threadbare jacket closer as he walked down Maple Street, each step echoing the weight of defeat. In his arms, a cardboard box held everything that remained of his career, a coffee-stained mug reading "World's Best Dad," family photos, and a final paycheck that wouldn't even touch this month's medical bills. At 34, Ezra had already buried more dreams than most people dare to build. 3 years ago, cancer had stolen his wife Celeste, leaving him to navigate parenthood alone. But if losing your soulmate wasn't devastating enough, fate had one more punch waiting. His 6-year-old daughter Aria was born with a congenital heart defect, and now her tiny heart was failing. The doctors had been brutally clear: without a heart transplant, she had maybe 6 months to live. Just hours earlier, Mr. Thornfield had delivered the final blow. Ezra, this is the 4th time this month you've been late. The Henderson Project can't wait for personal emergencies. We have to let you go. Personal emergencies. That's what his boss called watching your child fight for every breath, holding her hand through endless sleepless nights as medications ravaged her tiny body. Ezra had wanted to scream, to explain that some mornings he wasn't sure if Aria would wake up. Instead, pride and exhaustion had sealed his lips. He'd simply packed his desk and walked away from their only stable income. The numbers haunted him like a recurring nightmare. Aria's medications alone cost over $3,000 monthly. The heart transplant, when a match became available, would require $400,000. He'd already sold everything: Celeste's jewelry, their car, their house. Now they lived in a cramped apartment above Mrs. Valdez's bakery, where the kind woman had reduced their rent after learning about Aria's condition. As Ezra turned onto Pine Street, despair pressed down on him like a physical weight. How could he tell Aria that Daddy lost his job? How could he look into those bright brown eyes, mirrors of her mother's, and explain that he might not afford her medicine next month? That's when he saw them. Huddled against the brick wall of a closed hardware store sat a woman and a young boy, sharing a threadbare blanket. The woman had wrapped her arms around the child, desperately trying to shield him from the wind that seemed determined to steal whatever warmth they had left. Even in the dim streetlight, their violent shivering was unmistakable. The woman appeared to be in her early 30s, auburn hair peeking from beneath a worn knitted hat. Her clothes were clean but frayed, carrying the look of someone clinging to dignity by sheer will. The boy, maybe 8 years old, had sandy hair and freckles across his nose. His lips held a bluish tint that Ezra recognized with terrifying familiarity from Aria's worst days. Every rational thought screamed at Ezra to keep walking. He had his own catastrophe to manage, his own child to save. But something deeper than logic made him approach the pair. "Excuse me," he said softly, not wanting to startle them. "Are you okay?" The woman's head snapped up, fear flashing in her green eyes before she forced a smile. "We're fine, thank you. Just waiting for someone." Ezra knelt to their level, ignoring the cold seeping through his jeans. It's supposed to drop to 10 degrees tonight. Nobody should be out in this weather, especially with a child." Tears welled in the woman's eyes, but she blinked them away quickly. "I'm Serafina," she whispered, "and this is my son Jasper. We lost our apartment last week. I've been looking for work, but everything requires an address, references." Her voice cracked with defeat. Here was a mother facing homelessness with her child, and Ezra felt his heart breaking for them. Despite his own overwhelming problems, he couldn't walk away from their suffering. "I'm Ezra," he said, extending his hand. "Listen, I don't have much, but I have a warm apartment just up the street. Why don't you both stay the night? Get warm, have something hot to eat." If you've ever been moved by an unexpected act of kindness, you know there's something powerful happening here. Sometimes the people with the least to give are the ones who give the most. Please consider subscribing to Everbell Stories if this touches your heart. We share stories that remind us of the good in humanity. Serafina's eyes widened with surprise and suspicion. "That's very kind, but we couldn't impose on a stranger. How do we know you're not dangerous? A criminal?" Ezra finished gently. He pulled out his wallet, showing his ID, his employee badge from Morrison and Associates, and a photo of Arya. I'm just a single dad trying to survive. My daughter's in the hospital right now, and I understand what desperation feels like. Please, let me help. Something in his voice convinced her. Serafina's rigid posture relaxed slightly. Just for tonight, she said quietly. We'll find somewhere else tomorrow. Ezra led them up the narrow staircase to his apartment, Serafina carrying a small duffel bag while Jasper clutched a worn stuffed elephant. The apartment was modest but clean, with Arya's colorful artwork covering the refrigerator and her favorite blanket draped over the couch, silent reminders of the little girl fighting for her life. Please, sit, Ezra said, gesturing toward the couch. Let me make some hot chocolate. As he worked in the tiny kitchen, Ezra noticed how Serafina's eyes absorbed every detail of their space, the medical equipment in the corner, pill organizers covering the counter, the threatening stack of medical bills on the kitchen table. Jasper had fallen asleep almost instantly, his head resting on his mother's lap like he hadn't felt safe enough to truly rest in weeks. Your daughter, Serafina said softly as Ezra handed her a steaming mug. Is she very sick? Ezra settled into the armchair across from them, cradling his own mug like it contained liquid hope. Heart failure. She needs a transplant. The words came out flat and emotionless, the way they sound when you've repeated them to countless doctors, social workers, and insurance representatives who see your child as just another case file. Serafina's face crumpled with genuine sympathy. I'm so sorry. That must be incredibly difficult. Some days are harder than others, Ezra admitted. Today was particularly brutal. I lost my job this morning because I've been late too many times. Arya had a terrible night, and I couldn't leave her until the nurse arrived. He let out a bitter laugh. The irony is crushing. I'm trying to save money for her surgery, but I keep losing income because of her illness. They sat in comfortable silence, both lost in their own overwhelming thoughts. Finally, Serafina spoke. Ezra, can I ask you something? Why did you help us tonight? You don't know us, you have your own devastating problems. Ezra was quiet for a long moment, thinking about Celeste, about Arya, about all the nights he'd felt utterly alone in the universe. Because sometimes, he said finally, the only thing that keeps you human is remembering that other people are suffering too. And maybe, just maybe, if we help each other, we can all survive this. What was supposed to be one night became a week, then 2 weeks. Serafina insisted on contributing however she could. She cleaned the apartment with meticulous care, cooked meals that filled the space with warmth, and even accompanied Ezra to the hospital to visit Arya. Jasper and Arya became unlikely best friends despite their age difference, with Jasper reading stories to her and Arya teaching him elaborate card games from her hospital bed. Serafina had been surprisingly vague about her background, mentioning only that she'd worked in corporate management before everything collapsed. Ezra didn't pry, everyone had secrets, especially people who'd lost everything. What Ezra did notice was Serafina's remarkable intelligence and business instincts. When he mentioned his battles with insurance companies and medical billing departments, she spent hours on the phone, speaking with an authoritative tone that got immediate results. Within days, she'd negotiated payment plans and discovered programs that reduced Arya's medication costs by 40%. How did you know to do all that? Ezra asked one evening as they reviewed the newly organized medical files. Serafina smiled mysteriously. You pick things up along the way. Meanwhile, Ezra had been desperately sending out resumes, but Burlington's job market was unforgiving, especially for someone who'd been terminated. His savings account showed a balance that made his stomach churn, and he'd started skipping meals to ensure Arya's medications were covered. It was Serafina who suggested Thornfield Industries, a large manufacturing company based in Montpelier. They're expanding their Vermont operations, she said casually, handing him a job listing she'd somehow found. The position looks perfect for your experience. The interview went surprisingly well. The HR manager, Mrs. Pemberton, seemed genuinely impressed with Ezra's background and his references from Morrison and Associates. We'll contact you within the week, she promised with what seemed like genuine enthusiasm. 3 days later, Ezra's phone rang with news that seemed too good to be true. Mr. Blackwood? This is Mrs. Pemberton from Thornfield Industries. I'm delighted to offer you the position of operations manager. The salary is significantly higher than your requested range, and our benefits package includes comprehensive medical coverage. When can you start? Ezra nearly dropped the phone in disbelief. The salary was almost double his previous income, and the medical benefits would cover most of Arya's overwhelming expenses. For the first time in months, Genuine hope flickered in his chest like a candle refusing to be extinguished. Have you ever experienced a moment when hope returns after you thought it was gone forever? That feeling when the universe seems to align in your favor after months of everything going wrong? If this story is touching something in your heart, please hit that like button and let us know in the comments what gives you hope during difficult times. On his first day at Thornfield Industries, Ezra arrived early, nervous energy mixing with genuine excitement. The company's Vermont facility was impressive, a modern building with floor-to-ceiling windows and a lobby that spoke of success and stability. He was reviewing orientation materials when Mrs. Pemberton approached with a slight smile. "Mr. Blackwood, there's been a small change to your schedule. The CEO flew in unexpectedly and wants to meet with all new management hires personally. She's very hands-on with the hiring process." Ezra straightened his tie nervously. Meeting the CEO on day one wasn't exactly how he'd envisioned starting, but life had taught him to expect the unexpected. Mrs. Pemberton led him to a conference room on the top floor, where snow-covered mountains stretched endlessly beyond the windows. "She'll be with you in just a moment," Mrs. Pemberton said, closing the door behind her. Ezra paced the room, practicing his introduction while thinking about Arya, who had been so excited about Daddy's new job that she'd drawn him a good luck card with crayons. He thought about Jasper, who had whispered that morning, "I hope your new boss is nice to you, Mr. Ezra." The door opened behind him, and Ezra turned with a professional smile ready. The words died in his throat before they could form. Standing in the doorway, dressed in an elegant business suit with her auburn hair pulled back professionally, was Serafina. "Hello, Ezra," she said softly, her green eyes warm but filled with nervous anticipation. "I believe we have quite a lot to talk about." Ezra's mind reeled as puzzle pieces clicked into place with devastating clarity. Serafina Ashford, CEO of Thornfield Industries. The woman who had been sleeping on his couch for 2 weeks, helping navigate Arya's medical bills, cooking dinner in his tiny kitchen above the bakery. He started, then stopped, overwhelmed by emotions he couldn't even identify. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner," Serafina said, stepping into the room and closing the door with careful precision. "When Jasper and I were on the street that night, I had just escaped from an abusive relationship that nearly destroyed everything. My ex-husband had frozen all our accounts, convinced my board of directors I was having a mental breakdown, and had me temporarily removed as CEO. I was fighting to reclaim my life, but in the meantime, I had nowhere to go and no way to access my own money." She moved closer, her voice thick with emotion. "That night you found us, I was at the absolute lowest point of my existence. I didn't trust anyone, especially not men. But you showed us kindness without expecting anything in return. You shared your food, your home, your story. You let Jasper play with Arya's toys and never made us feel like burdens, even though I knew money was desperately tight." Ezra sank into one of the conference room chairs, still processing this reality that seemed impossible. "The job. I've been back as CEO for a week now, long enough to review all new hires. When I saw your application, I knew I had to interview you personally. Not because of our friendship, but because you're genuinely qualified for this position. Mrs. Pemberton didn't even know I knew you when she made the hiring recommendation." Ezra looked up at her, this woman who had been simultaneously a homeless stranger and a corporate CEO, and felt something fundamental shift in his understanding of the universe. "Serafina, I don't know what to say." "Say you'll stay," she said simply, vulnerability replacing her corporate composure. "Say you'll let me help Arya the way you helped Jasper and me. The company has a special medical fund for employees' families facing serious illness. Arya's transplant will be fully covered, and she'll have access to the best cardiac specialists in the country." Tears blurred Ezra's vision as months of crushing fear and desperation finally lifted from his shoulders like chains falling away. "I can't believe this is actually real." Serafina smiled, the same gentle, genuine smile he'd seen across his kitchen table over morning coffee. "It's real, Ezra. Sometimes the universe has a mysterious way of bringing exactly the right people together at precisely the right moment. This is what happens when kindness meets destiny. If you believe in the power of helping others, even when you have nothing to give, please subscribe to Everbell Stories. Your support helps us share more stories that remind us miracles still happen in our world." 6 months later, Ezra stood in the hospital corridor, watching through a window as Arya played video games with Jasper in her room. The heart transplant had been a complete success, and his daughter was growing stronger every single day. Her cheeks held healthy color again, and her laughter filled their apartment every evening like music he thought he'd never hear. Serafina appeared beside him, carrying 2 cups of coffee from the cafeteria. "How is she feeling today?" Like she wants to climb mountains. Ezra laughed, marveling at the transformation. The doctor says she'll be ready to go home by the end of the week. And how are you feeling? Serafina asked, her hand finding his with natural ease. Ezra intertwined their fingers, still amazed by how perfectly they fit together. Like maybe I finally understand what people mean when they talk about miracles. What had started as a simple act of kindness on the coldest February night had blossomed into something neither of them had dared to imagine. Serafina and Jasper had never left the apartment, and eventually, Ezra had asked them to stay permanently. Their relationship had developed slowly, built on a foundation of mutual respect, shared struggles, and genuine love that grew from the deepest kind of understanding. Arya burst out of her room, her small face radiant with health and boundless energy. Daddy. Serafina. Look what Jasper taught me. She performed an elaborate card trick with the confidence of a professional magician, beaming with pride at their amazed reactions. That's absolutely amazing, sweetheart, Ezra said, scooping her up in his arms and marveling at how strong and solid she felt now, no longer the fragile child who had struggled for every breath. Can we go get ice cream to celebrate me coming home? Arya asked hopefully, her eyes sparkling with the joy of a child who had been given a second chance at life. I think that sounds absolutely perfect, Serafina said, ruffling Jasper's hair as he joined them in the hallway, his own face glowing with happiness. As they walked toward the elevator as a family, because that's exactly what they had become, a family forged not by blood but by choice, kindness, and love, Ezra reflected on the incredible journey that had brought them all together. He had lost his job, his savings, and nearly his hope. But in his darkest moment, he had chosen to help two strangers, and that single choice had ultimately saved them all. The automatic doors slid open, and they stepped into the bright Vermont sunshine, ready to build their future together. A future that had started with one man's decision to show compassion to strangers on the coldest night of the year. Sometimes, Ezra thought as Arya's laughter echoed around them and Serafina's hand squeezed his with gentle reassurance, the smallest acts of kindness create the biggest miracles. Sometimes, when you think you have absolutely nothing left to give, giving everything you have is exactly what brings everything you need back to you. Life had taught him that storms don't last forever, but the kindness we show during those storms, that creates ripples that can change everything. In helping Serafina and Jasper, he hadn't just saved them from a freezing night. He had saved his own daughter's life, found love he thought was lost forever, and discovered that sometimes the most broken people are exactly the ones meant to help heal each other. As they walked toward their car, a family born from the ashes of loss and shaped by the power of unexpected grace, Ezra knew that Celeste would have been proud. He had kept his promise to her to never stop believing in the good in people, even when the world seemed determined to prove him wrong. The story of how a struggling single dad became a man who had everything he never knew he needed began with a simple choice: to see strangers as family, to treat other people's pain as if it mattered as much as his own, and to believe that kindness, even when it costs you everything, is never wasted. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to Everbell Stories and share it with someone who needs to be reminded that miracles still happen every day. Sometimes they look like job offers, sometimes like medical breakthroughs, and sometimes like strangers who become the family you never knew you were looking for. Leave a comment below telling us about a time when kindness changed your life. We read every single one, and your stories inspire the content we create. Remember, you never know when your act of kindness might be exactly what changes someone's entire world.